Chapter 1. Tanis climbed onto the biggest barn to watch the dinosaurs. Her whole body hurt from a grueling day of ranching. There was dirt underneath her chipped nails and a big brown stain on her blue jeans from where she'd fallen in the mud while milking Dusty, her favorite heifer. In the fields, the cows mooed contentedly, chewing clover. The evening was thick with pollen and the warm buzz of bees and chirping crickets. Tanis' body was tight and lean from 17 years of working alongside her father and brothers on their farm. Had she grown up in the city around men who were not her family, she might have known she was beautiful. She'd inherited her mother's generous breasts and backside, but hard labor had crystallized her curves, making them more severe and striking. Though Tanis knew nothing of her own beauty, she knew of the beauty of the dinosaurs, whom she watched every night without fail. Astonishing, the news had proclaimed so many decades earlier, that they should live among us, recreated out of DNA collected from rocks. The first generation lived as zoo animals. They might have remained sideshow attractions, but a biologist at the Chicago Center for Paleolithic Genetic Research noticed the way Albertosaurus and Allosaurus work in groups systematically to smash rocks. Multinational conglomerates funded a bold dinosaurs to work experiment that succeeded beyond their imagining, and thus, like so many other species, dinosaurs were at last belatedly domesticated and integrated into the workforce of man. They proved especially good at raw material extraction. They thrived when introduced into the tar sands, iridescent beasts growing warm and strong by the rainbow-slicked pools of crude. They were primordial beasts, drawn always back to the slick and pumping heart of the earth. Tanis had grown up on these histories, and they seemed like myths to her. She couldn't imagine a time where dinosaurs were everywhere, a time when people protested by bombing research centers and zoos. It seemed to her as stupid as shooting at cows. Her family lived in the foothills of some of the last remaining farmland in Alberta. From the roof of the biggest barn, she could watch the extractions, see the bodies of the pterodactyls, as perfectly engineered as airplanes but of warm flesh. During the day, the hordes of Tyrannosaurus and smaller carnivores were visible. Sometimes a raptor would scamper through their fields, scaring the crows. She sketched them in secret sometimes, their long necks, blues and greens. Learning how to draw their feathers was hard at first, but eventually became her favorite part. She loved how the scales and feathers worked together for heat maintenance and protection. When her father found her sketchbook, he slapped her across the face. "Those ugly lizards are going to dig our graves," he growled. Tanis learned to keep the sketchbook under her pillow while she slept and carried it in her knapsack across the farm during the day. Each night, she dreamed she'd wake up as a giant and beautiful dinosaur, and that she would flee her life as a farm girl. The sun pulled the shadows of trees and oil rigs long across the fields. Tanis closed the sketchbook and set it on the shingles. The clover-sweet breeze tugged strands of honey hair out of her ponytail. She pulled her flannel across her chest, her nipples prickled with the evening coldness. In this light, the dinosaurs were perfect. They shone deep amber and crimson. That color made her heart rush. Every day they seemed closer. The farmland was shrinking, true, but it was more than that. She felt like she could throw a stone and hit one. She dug in the gutters of the barn and grasped a flat rock. The stone arced through the clean air and landed a few feet from the barn, nowhere near the working dinosaurs. She threw another, so hard she thought her shoulder might pop out of its socket. She threw another and another until the gutters by her feet were empty and her arm hurt. At last it was dark, and Tanis felt cold and alone. Her body knew the barn, every foothold and loose corner of siding, and she slid quickly down its face. The first thing she noticed when she landed was an unusual smell, like fish, she thought, and flowers, but not unpleasant. Perhaps her mother was experimenting for dinner. Tanis heard a hiss and watched her cat Misty, a gray Persian, scatter into the hole in the barn. Then she saw the leg. It took Tanis a second to realize what she was looking at. The dark, iridescent feathers shone in so many colors she would never be able to render them, even if she spent her whole life drawing them. She followed the tree-thick leg up to its strong hips, wide chest, and finally the glorious saurian head 8 feet above the barn floor. And the word unbidden into her mind. Allosaurus. His eyes were the deep green of oceans she had only imagined in her dreams. His cheekbones looked carved from prehistoric cliffs. His feather dew was coiffed in a sexy and hip honky-tonk curl. He let a low and deep roar like a tractor coming on after a long winter. His body reminded her of a living lake, the way one move would ripple across his feathers. He reached out. She saw his communication device, the wires round his claw. After some violent misunderstandings, all infant dinosaurs were now hardwired with a bioelectric communication device that allowed them to speak telepathically with their human foreman. She knew with one touch she would be able to see into his mind, and he would be able to see into hers. She backed away, fearful of Of what? She should have felt instinctive terror at the giant predator's presence, but that wasn't it at all. Was it something else? Was it fear of really communicating with them, of knowing what he was thinking? Did he feel the same way? He stared into her with such a begging look. She let him touch her temple and felt the same quick zing of their minds tuning into the same channel. I've watched you too, Tanis, his mind said into hers. Then he backed away. He was shy too. He stared down at his claw feet. Half afraid and half wanting, Tanis let him sniff her neck. His mouth parted, and she saw his rows of razor teeth. His breath smelled hot and earthy like a barbecue. She couldn't distinguish fear from desire. Goosebumps prickled over every inch of her soft human skin. He touched her temple again with his talon, and she watched his fantasy like a movie projected into her skull. He didn't know whether to eat her or to take her from behind and make her his mate. His tongue slid out of his mouth and brushed behind the ear with unexpected softness. The feeling bloomed all down her spine. She felt a wetness between her legs, something she'd only experienced once or twice while horseback riding. It made her throb. He licked her again, this time harder, more ardently, down her entire neck, tasting her fear and sweat. His tongue was as big as her whole hand. She imagined other places he could lick her with it. She reached down and gently stroked the feathers of his chest, muscled from labor. His skin was hard like a leather saddle, but his feathers felt like tulip petals, soft and slightly wet. She began exploring him with her hands. Tanis, move! She heard her father shout from behind her. She saw him, short and stocky, sickly human, with a pipe sticking out of the corner of his mouth, shotgun cocked. No! She shouted and leapt in front of the Allosaurus. The shot boomed through her eardrums and into her shoulder. It sent her flying through the air like a sack of flour. She landed on a hay bale, coughing, wind knocked out of her. The magic of the encounter was gone. She felt cold and shattered, blood gushing from her shoulders, soaking her flannel shirt. The dinosaur hissed and wailed, lunging at her father. He was several times larger than the man. She sensed his hot fury. He was upon him in seconds, teeth out. No! Tanis shouted. The beast turned back, eyes narrowed at her. Though they were not connected by his telepathy device, Tanis could feel his thoughts. You would save him. Tanis nodded sadly. As much as she hated her human life, she'd lived with her father for 17 years and felt some sympathy for him. His small life and hatred. The dinosaur forgot her cowering father and returned to her. He lifted her into his talons with remarkable tenderness and held her to him. She smelled the fish and flower scent that had first identified him, and it made her feel safe. She held on tight as he ran with her, springing on quick lizard legs out of their barn and across the property. All of the stars in the sky swirled as they ran together as one creature. Behind them, her father and brothers had assembled with shotguns firing, but Tanis and her mate were sprinting too quickly. The gunshots came nowhere near the fleeing couple. After an age of running, the blasts grew quiet and impotent. She saw her brothers and fathers fade into even tinier specks. She thought her heart would burst as she curled into the warm and welcoming shoulder of her new love, the love she had observed unnoticed for too long. Was it shock or blood loss or dawning realization? Her old life was over. Finally, all the senseless noise from her farm had disappeared. It was dark. The dinosaur stopped running and set her down in the field. The cold air rushed around her. Pain burned her shoulder. He touched her forehead. What do I call you? She asked. We don't really have names, he said, but you can call me Big Al. She repeated the name out loud and telepathically. Big Al. It was so beautiful to her, so simple. She couldn't believe she was here in the field with a dinosaur, her dinosaur, Big Al. He rubbed his muzzle all over her body. Again, her skin perked up. She didn't know she could feel this way, like she was jumping into a freezing lake while being burned alive. Big Al popped her buttons easily with his talons. He tore off her pants like they were made of paper. Tanis had never been naked in front of a man before, never mind a man dinosaur. She tried covering herself with her uninjured arm, but he pinned it against the cold earth and with one fluid motion ran his tongue from her injured shoulder down to her hip. Tanis gasped. He slid his tongue back up her body with extreme tenderness, like a hot summer breeze. With the tip, he drew circles on her neck, working his way from the base of her ear to her collarbones. His every touch made her tingle. He traced her breasts, circling her nipples, which leapt up. They hardened with a pleasure that was almost painful. Big Al continued down her body, licking her belly and inner thighs. He kissed her ankles. With his strong jaw, he pushed apart her legs. Her thighs quivered. He licked her ardently, like she was the most delicious thing in the entire world. Tanis felt her whole body melt. He gasped her butt with his talons, tasting her deeper and deeper. Pleasure moved from her in waves, rippling, With his tail, he grabbed around the waist and lifted her up so that she was face to face with him. He held her to his chest. She could feel his warmth and his power, his love emanating. He lowered her onto his sex. She felt it, massive, rubbing against her own warm wetness. He slid her up and down, wetting himself. Then he entered her. His talons dug into her shoulders, forcing her down to accept all of him inside of her. She felt like she was going to be torn apart from the size and also from the intensity of her own pleasure. He pushed deeper. Everything about him was too much. Tanis could barely breathe. She saw colors, the bright reds and ambers of dinosaurs flying at twilight. There were stars behind them, burning hot, swirling into her eyelids. Pain gave way to pleasure. She cried quietly at first and then louder, letting out big wet wails timed to his every movement. He was churning her insides to a soft, satisfying butter. She gripped his scales with her heels and began riding him hard, cantering the way that she had through her fields her entire life. Her body knew what to do. Instinct took over. Big Al moaned. He wrapped his mouth around her injured shoulder, lapping at the blood as he thrust. Tanis became lightheaded with pleasure and blood loss. Big red tingling flowers bloomed through her entire body. She saw stars again, whole galaxies of his iridescent feathers. She lost track of her orgasms. Where one began and another ended, it became an endless chain. Could she die, she wanted to know, from too much pleasure? She hadn't believed it was possible. Then, when she thought it would never end, they would stay like this forever. With one final explosive thrust, she felt his love go off like a rocket inside of her, filling her completely. It was over. Big Al lay down in the field. She climbed up onto his chest and heard the deep pump of his heart, the braying of his breath. She knew she would love him for the rest of her life. He touched her temple again. "I'm so hungry," he communicated, and his thoughts stuttered, hesitant. "Go on," Tanis whispered. "You can trust me. I love the taste of your blood." His eyes went shy as he said that. She felt his vulnerability. She lifted him up to her seated position and looked down at her body, at the wound her father had inflicted on her shoulder. Her arm dangled, dead and gray. There wasn't any use trying to save it. She knew what to do. She offered her injured arm to his hunger and felt the hot pain of his love as he devoured the whole thing. Chapter 1.